Hey, this is Dave with SparkFun. Today we are going to learn to put together the twin motor gearbox. This is a great standalone gearbox, but it's also an integral part of the ProtoSnap mini bot. So if you have one of those or are just looking to build a small rover, this is the one to get. I'm going to help you put it together. To start, I think we should just open the box and take a look at what's inside. Everything comes nicely packaged in these little baggies, so there are a lot of small parts to keep track of. And of course some instructions. There are a lot of small parts. That's why they put them in the nice little baggies to keep them together. Some people like to place the small parts in an egg carton just to keep them separate, and you can kind of organize them based on size or function. I'm going to do everything on the table here just so we can all get a good look at what's going on. If you look at the directions, there are different configurations. We are building the configuration that is the 58:1 gear ratio. There's also a higher torque version that has a lower ultimate speed, but we don't want that one. We're going for the 58:1, not the 208:1. I think it's 208 or 203. And also we're going to have the shaft coming out of the A hole here instead of the B or C. So this is the mid-range output shaft, and that's what we're going for. So for starters, you can see that everything here is kind of in one of these molds, so we need to break everything apart, and I'm going to go ahead and start doing that now. It might help if you have some either nippy cutters or some flush wire cutters. These might help to get everything nice and flush and leave as little residue as possible. These two pieces are just housing for the other components, so this is just trash. You can discard that. Since this is a twin motor gearbox, you can see there are two halves to this, the assembly here. And there are also two bags of gears. Each bag of gears corresponds to one half of the motor, or the gearbox. To start, I'm only going to open one bag of gears, being very careful not to drop any of them. I'm also going to delve into this bag here. This is the bag of lots of other goodies. The thing I'm interested in first are these kind of hex-shaped drivers. These are the actual output shafts, as well as this small Allen wrench. So if you follow the instructions step by step, the first thing we're going to be doing is setting this pinion gear on one of the output shafts. As you can see, there's a little nubbin on it left over from the manufacturing process, so I'm just going to take the nippy cutters to it. Now, another thing we need to do is access this small bag of parts here to get the set screws out of them. What I'm interested in first is this little set screw. So the first thing we're going to do is put the shaft through this pinion gear here. Now, it can be a really tight fit, so I'm going to try to squeeze it in there. Now, don't get too carried away. So what we're actually going to do is use this centerpiece here as a spacer. So once you can just barely see the metal piece sticking through, what we're going to do is stick it into the A slot here and push it in as far as it'll go. Now, it'll stop it. You see it doesn't go all the way through, so it'll actually stop it exactly where it needs to be. So now that this pinion gear is set, we're going to do the same thing with this other hex nut here. First thing I'm going to do is just get this little set screw started in the gear. So I'm going to attach it to the Allen wrench. Then just give it maybe a good full turn, just so it's set and we don't have to deal with it later. I'm going to find another one of the hex output shafts, and it should slide on pretty easily, and it should be pretty free. So we're going to do the same thing with the A slot here. We're just going to put it in, slide it all the way down to the bottom, and now it should be spaced correctly, so we're just going to set it in place and tighten it down. We shouldn't tighten it too tight, but nice and snug so it doesn't go anywhere. We're going to start with this piece. So we're going to look for the side here that has the twin motor gearbox logo on it. I'll start by turning it over and reaching into my magic box of hardware here and putting these little collars on. The first piece we're going to put in is this one that we already used before with the lock washer or lock nut on it. We're going to put this right here. You see there are 4 gears. These two are identical. The ones you got to look out for are the ones that have the right angle teeth on it and the one with this collar on it. So we're actually going to put this piece with the collar on first. And you're going to want to line it up so the spacing in the collar is on the side of the lock nut that has the gear on it. You see how that works? The next thing we're going to add is the round shaft in here, and it's going to go in that piece right there. Next up, we're going to put on the output shaft, which is this guy that we already spaced out correctly. So it's going to go right there, and as you see, that's actually going to be the output of the gear motor. Now come these two identical gears. The first one goes on the round shaft, the next one goes on this hex shaft, and finally, we're going to put on this gear with the right angle teeth on it. So this is what's going to be actually driven by the motor itself. Next, we're going to put on one of these spacers. There should be a handful of them, I think 4 in the kit, so we're going to put one of these on. We have to put on more spacers for when we put out everything together. So a little trick I like to do is put them with the collar facing up on the shafts themselves. So now everything should be together pretty well at this point. So it's just a matter of lining everything up, making sure it all fits snugly into place. Be very careful, because while the hex driver here has the lock nut on it, this round one does not. So if you pull that out, you're going to have to start all over. So make sure that that gets snug in. Don't turn it upside down for fear of that falling out and all the gears coming apart. So at this point, we have almost half of the gearbox assembled already. So I want to save my work. I want to make sure I don't lose anything. So what I'm going to do is, while holding it together, I'm going to put a finger on this shaft here so it doesn't fall out, like I said, and have all the gears spill out. I'm going to flip it up. I'm going to take one of these longer self-tapping screws that comes in the kit, put it in there, go ahead and screw it down. So this just holds everything together. I'm going to do the same thing for the other two holes as well. Down there. You don't want to over-tighten them because this is metal on plastic, so you don't want to strip them out, but nice and snug should be okay. At that point, we have half the gearbox. You can try rotating the output shaft here and you can see how everything interacts. But again, keep in mind that this circular shaft is not set yet. So if you turn it upside down, all your gears are going to fall out. So now we're going to move on to the other half of the gearbox. It's going to be basically a mirror image of the side that we've already assembled. So I'm going to start by throwing in these little collars, the little metal collars. After you've added the collars, we're going to assemble the gearbox, like I said, in a mirror image, starting with this gear with the right angle teeth on it, on the circular output shaft. Then we're going to use the two identical gears here, put them on in alternating order on the two shafts. Finally, we add the gear here with the collar on it, and then ultimately the collar itself. Now this one is different because we're not actually going to be setting this. We're just going to throw the collar on there. It doesn't need to have the set screw, doesn't need to be tightened. We'll just put it in for spacing. Then we're going to go ahead and add these collars there, the output shaft, which needs a collar, and finally this spacer that also needs its own collar. Now if everything goes well, you should just be able to slide this on, starting with the output shaft, and very carefully lining everything up. You should be good to go. Now just like the other side, we don't want to lose our work, so we're going to add these 3 screws to tighten it down. And with that, we have the gears fully functioning. At this point, we're almost done. All we have left to do is add the motors. There are these 2 small motors and 2 drive gears. So you want to put the motors on, or put the gears on the motor, and they should be flush with the output shaft of the motor. So to do that, we're just going to push the motor down on the table, just like that. So as you can see, it's flush. And these should just slide in and snap into place. And I'm making sure that the tabs here on the motor that you're going to connect to are facing the outside, so they're easy to attach. You should see the gears engage, and you should be able to turn the output shaft and have it spin the motor. Remember that the gearbox is designed to have the motor spin and engage. The motor spins at a very high RPM with very low torque. So this is just upping the torque a little bit and reducing the output speed. So with that, you have a fully functioning gearbox. Now remember, it does come with some grease here. If it's noisy or rattles a little bit or isn't performing as well as you might hope, you can add just a dab of grease on each side. You should just put it on one gear and spin it around. Also, if you look in the bag that came with, there's a bunch of mounting hardware. There's 2 self-taping screws that you can put through if you're mounting it to, say, wood or plastic. And there's also 2 machine screws and nuts, so you can mount it to a piece of metal. So with that, we have a fully functional twin motor gearbox. You should be able to attach wires here and solder to them and attach it to whatever robot base you have. In fact, we have the ProtoSnap Minibot, which is based on the one and only twin motor gearbox. So this is a great way to teach embedded electronics if you are looking for a very simple robot base that you can later break apart and turn into another project. This is a great way to get started with that. I hope you found this informative, and I hope it took a little bit of the pain out of assembling this twin motor gearbox. I know the first time I built one, it was a little bit confusing, so I hope this did help. And with that, we'll see y'all next time from SparkFun Electronics.